The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for our 30 on Thursday, Making Personalized Possible, an introduction to Kentico's digital marketing module. Just a little bit about Protiviti before we get started. Protiviti provides consulting solutions in finance, technology, operations, data, analytics, governance, risk, and internal audit to our clients through our network of more than 70 offices in over 20 countries. Our full-service software solutions team provides consulting and on-demand support for SharePoint, Office 365, Salesforce, Nintex, Sitecore, Kentico, SQL, and .NET. Our next webinar is scheduled for May 17th, and you can register for that and get a full look at all of our events at ecm.protiviti.com/events. Today's session is being recorded. You can access the recording and see all past webinar recordings on our YouTube channel. Along with that, this deck will be sent out to all the attendees tomorrow morning. And then if you have any questions at all during today's webinar, please insert them in the question window on the GoToMeeting toolbar, and we will take 5 minutes at the end to answer all questions. Today's presenter is Maggie Swearingen, an Associate Director with Protiviti located in the DC area, and my name is Taylor Ganser, and I will be moderating today's session. With that, I'll hand the mic over to you, Maggie.
Great, thanks. I will present my screen as soon as I get the go-ahead here. Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Again, my name is Maggie Swearingen. I'm an Associate Director and Experience Architect at Protiviti. What that means is I help clients with their user experience life cycle. So from soup to nuts, including information architecture structure. We're going to be focusing today on Kentico. For those of you who have joined us for 30 on Thursdays in the past, you might have realized that this is a bit of a different topic. Traditionally, we focus on SharePoint and Office 365, which are, of course, specialties of our group. But we are an enterprise content management group, and we do focus on other content management platforms. Kentico is one of our premier choices for focus, particularly when it comes to public-facing websites. So today's discussion is really going to be focused on how you can use Kentico and use the tools in Kentico to make your public-facing website personalized for your constituents. As someone who uses the internet pretty frequently, and I'm sure everybody on the phone does too, you experience this every single day. So yesterday I went on to Amazon and I bought paper towel and Lysol because we need to do a little disinfecting in my house these days. I have a couple of sick children, and sure enough, this morning when I went and logged into my Outlook email, all I saw on the right-hand rail were ads for mops and other kinds of paper towels and other scents of Lysol. And why is that? Well, because my information is out there, and the sites know what I did yesterday, and they're pushing new content at me based on my online behavior. For a lot of us, though, we see that in the e-commerce space, but we don't necessarily see it in the organizational website space. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how you can start to do what the Amazons and the Facebooks of the world are doing on your organization website. So hopefully, I'm sure we have a lot of marketing professionals joining us today on the phone. And for those of you who are on the phone, you raise your hand in your office or your cubicle if you have a public-facing website. I'm sure every hand was raised on the call. How many of you out there also use some sort of email marketing system? Again, every hand should have gone up. Whether you use Constant Contact or Marketo or MailChimp, we've been using these email marketing systems to track our campaigns, track our opens and our metrics for well over a decade now. And then thirdly, how many of us are using Google Analytics, web trends, any Adobe products that are actually tracking our site analytics? Well, I'm sure also every hand was raised. The problem, as you can probably see by that explanation, is we are talking about disparate systems. So your website is built on one platform. You're using a separate platform in many cases for your email marketing processes. And a lot of us are even using a third application for our web analytics. Wouldn't it be great if we could do it all in one place? So not only would it be a one-stop shop, but we could start to use information from these disparate systems to drive our overall marketing strategy. That's hard to do when we're dealing with analytics and data from 3 different places. It's a lot easier to do if we're dealing with analytics and data from one location. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So I want to talk a little bit about the personalization life cycle, and then I want to talk at some very high level about some of the features Kentico offers. Then we'll dig into the tool and talk about how these pieces work together. We don't have a lot of time, so if you're interested in really digging into this and learning the nuts and bolts, I would encourage you to speak with Taylor and to follow up after this session. We'd be happy to talk in more detail. This is a fantastic module, but it does take a long time to kind of learn all the intricacies of. So let's talk a little bit about the personalization life cycle. Personalization starts with knowing who an individual is. And the way we do that in Kentico is really focused on our contacts. And we're going to talk about different ways to segment our contacts in a little bit. Optimization. Once we're able to segment our contacts, then we're able to optimize the content that we give them. If we send the same marketing email out to our entire list of 155,000 users every single time, your hits, your conversions are not going to be sustainable. So what we want to do is we want to have targeted marketing campaigns based on personalization and personalized features. Automation. One of the most interesting features I've always thought of this marketing module is that we can actually begin to automate our email marketing processes based on actions or unactions, quite frankly, that people do on a website. So I'll give you a perfect example. I was filling up my online cart the other day at Gymboree because they were having a fantastic sale, and then the doorbell rang and I abandoned my cart and did not actually check out. The next day, I received an email because I had been logged into the site from Gymboree outlining everything I had in my cart and reminding me that I only had until 11:59 that night to check out and get the 50% discount. That was an automated marketing email that went out based on an action, based on who I was. We can do that in Kentico, and it doesn't have to be related to e-commerce. Intelligence and data. Intelligence and data go hand in hand. The more you know, the smarter you are, the better choices you can make for automation, optimization, and personalization. And you see how all of these pieces begin to fit together. So let's go really quickly over here to our Kentico site. I am actually in the administrative view of our online marketing module here. So this is not what the front end of this demo Dancing Goat website looks like, but we're going to be focusing on these administrative tools and how we can use them today. So that's why I am in this view of the site. Over here in my menu, you can see I have quite a few different options, all related to online marketing. But what I want us to talk about today is the story. How do we start? How do we start on this journey of personalization? Because it doesn't happen overnight. I think the first thing you need to really begin to think about is from a marketing standpoint, Who are your site visitors? And for those of us who have gone through a website redesign recently, the term persona will not be a surprise to you. One of the first things you want to do as you're reviewing your online marketing strategy is figuring out who are the people that come to your site. Now, I will say that in online marketing, our personas are generally a bit more broad than they are when we're doing a very focused web redesign project. So if you have personas from a project like that, I would not say that they directly translate to what we want in our online marketing, but probably elements of those users translate. We want to come up with these personas. Why do we want to do that? Well, personas help us figure out what people are doing on the site. They also help us validate our own online research. Often we think certain types of people are coming to the website, and we're not exactly correct. We can start using these tools to figure out how close we are. So let's take a look firstly at personas. So this is, again, a demo site. So we have 3 personas built in here. You can see they're pretty generic. We have a coffee geek. This is actually a coffee sales website. And we have a cafe owner. Obviously, 2 types of people that we would want to target. If you're an association, generally speaking, you probably want to target members and non-members, and maybe even some small segments of those members. Perhaps you are an educational association and you want to target students, or you want to target administrators. But again, we don't want to get too specific, and you'll see why in a moment. If we go in and take a look at this persona, Martina has a beautiful picture and a name, and she is enabled. But this is where things start to get really interesting, is this points threshold. So what we're doing here is we are saying, assign this persona, Martina the coffee geek, to somebody who, and I'm going to click over on my rules here, has done some of these activities on the site. Once a user does a certain number of activities on the site, they're assigned points for those activities. Once they reach a certain points threshold, they're assigned that persona. Why would we want somebody to be assigned a persona? Well, it goes back to personalization. We can target content based on certain personas. What we present, either in an email campaign or even on a web page to a cafe owner, is going to be different than what we present to a coffee geek. The more we know about users, the better we can target their content and their actions. We're going to talk a little bit about rule types in a minute, but at a very high level, there are a few different kinds of rule types. One is an attribute. So attributes are exactly what you expect: the state someone's from, their job role, whether they're a male or a female, even anything that you really know about someone, what committee they sit on. Macros are activities are things that people do on your site. So in this case, the activity is subscribed to the newsletter, filled out a form, registered for the 30 on Thursday webinar. Those are all activities. Macros are a combination of those 2 things. So I can say, I want somebody who is from Alabama and has registered for the Dancing Goat newsletter, so that we could really specifically target users. Let's say we're having a roundtable in the Fort Lauderdale office. Well, I want to go to my site and I want to really specifically segment that audience to be pushing the right kind of content toward those regional people. Generally speaking, people from Atlanta don't go to free roundtables in Fort Lauderdale. That's what we're looking at here. We're looking at this planning and strategy, and then how we can implement it in the technology. I'm going to go back here to my menu, and I want to talk about contacts a bit, because really what we were talking about just a minute ago bleeds directly into contacts. Contacts, if you ask me, are the foundation for everything else that you're doing here. Contacts can come from a bunch of different places. They could come from a member management system. They could come from a CRM. They could come from Salesforce. They could come from an Excel spreadsheet from people that you met at a conference last week. They can come from a listing of people who signed up for this webinar. Contacts are any and all of those people. If we know who they are, if we have attributes to assign to them, all the better. If we don't, though, that's okay too. And this is one of those features that the first time I saw it 3 years ago now, a light bulb went on in my head, because we can actually use, as you can see here, data about users who are anonymous. And that is a fantastically powerful tool. Is it better if we know who they are? Well, sure, of course it is, because then we can even leverage email marketing, etc. But even if we don't know who they are, we can take and we can create activities based on what anonymous people are doing and still put them into buckets and target content at them. Maybe the target is only web-based because we don't necessarily have another way to reach them, but we can still target web-based content at them based on who they are and what they're doing, even though we don't actually know who they are. We just know what they're doing, which is really, really powerful here on this site. Contacts help us do a lot of things though, and for a lot of us, we have a pretty solid existing contact list already, which is great. What we want to do with those anonymous people is we want to convert them into being a contact. So in this case, you'll see that these anonymous people just visited the homepage and then they probably left the site. That's okay. That's fine. I would call those cold leads. They didn't find what they were looking for. We aren't really the organization that they were looking for. That's okay. Not a big deal. If any of these anonymous users had done several different things on the site, well, that's interesting. Let's try to look more into that. But really what we want is we want to convert these anonymous users into contacts. And we can do that a number of ways. If somebody signs up for a newsletter, conversion. Sign up for a webinar, conversion. Fill out a contact form for more information, conversion. Any of those means that you have on your current website to figure out who a person is are going to be really, really valuable in this process. So what I would suggest as you're preparing is to get ready and evaluate those pieces so that you can build them into this process. We're going to take a look a little bit more at contacts in a bit, but I want to talk about two pieces of contacts. One are contact groups, and contact groups are just like they sound. They are groups of contacts based on some sort of attribute. So I was working with a client recently who wanted to know if we could target email campaigns based on geography or based on committee membership, for example, which is an attribute that they have in their CRM. Yep, you can absolutely do that. And you use contact groups to do that. Obviously, this system interfaces very easily with those third-party systems where you might be housing your contact lists. Secondly, I want to talk a little bit about scoring. Scoring is similar to personas, but it's a little bit more specific. What I like to think is personas enable us to target general content. Scoring enables us to take it to the next level and move someone into the email automation process. So from this part of the discussion forward, we're going to assume that we know who the user is on the site. They've authenticated somehow, or they've given us some information about who they are. Well, then that opens up a world of opportunity for us. Scoring, much like personas, gives us scores based on activities, and it basically segments all of your contacts and all of your leads into different categories. So obviously someone with higher scores is going to be someone who's engaging more with your website, and a reasonable assumption would be that they are a stronger lead. You can do a lot with lead scoring. It is probably one of the most integral parts to this entire process. You can see here, we've scored this lead. He actually, I believe, falls into a persona also. So you could be both. You could be scoring as a lead because you're doing activities, but maybe there are separate activities that outline a certain persona. So a user could potentially fall into both categories. And we can take a look at what sorts of activities he's been doing, what groups he's a member of, what his account looks like. Really, the options are endless. But what this all boils down to is, again, personalization. So we have a few different ways to do personalization on this website, and I realize I already have 4 minutes left. I told you that there was a lot to cover here, so I'm going to go over it as quickly as I can. A/B testing. A/B testing is a wonderful way to do two things. One, to segment content. Two, to figure out what content works better. So I'll give you a great example. I was working with a client. They had two versions of a web page. One had a submission form on the bottom right. One had a button on the hero image that said, contact us for more information, and they clicked on the button and it went to a contact form. Two different ends to the same means. We wanted their contact information. They tested that for a little while, and it turns out that the button on the hero image performed not as well as the form on the page. We don't exactly know why. We're assuming because it was an extra click, it took someone out of the context of what they're learning, but it was an opportunity to figure out what kind of content works better. Another example of how to use A/B or multivariate is if you have slightly different content that you want to send out to different groups. So maybe you have a certain marketing message for 3/4 of your population about your annual meeting, but 1/4 you would like to give a slightly different variation to because your keynote speaker is the governor of California. And so for all of your users in California, you want to highlight that piece, whereas for the rest of the country, that piece might not be quite as engaging and promote that conversion. So that's why you would use A/B testing in that example. Campaigns. I mentioned earlier that a lot of us are using Google Analytics to track our campaigns, or we're using the internal mechanism in our email marketing system. Well, what's interesting about this is that it's all right here. So once I've created a campaign and I've targeted certain contacts within that campaign, I can actually track the campaign right here. I can track it through social media, I can track it through email marketing, and I can track it through website actions. So all of those 3 different applications are brought into one campaign management system for us right here. Let's talk really quick about the email marketing tool and the marketing automation piece. Email marketing is really exactly what you would expect. It gives you an opportunity to create different email marketing campaigns. But what is really, really special about this is the way that it interacts with our marketing automation module. So I've created a bunch of different email campaigns. I have different email templates. What I want to do now is really the end game in all of this, which is push content to users based on what I've learned about them through this entire process automatically. So for a lot of us, we might be using an email marketing tool, but it's not an automated email marketing tool. This gives us an opportunity to create automation based on what people are doing on the website. And I'll give you a really quick glance at this. So this is an email for an abandoned shopping cart activity, just like we talked about earlier, in fact. And really, this is just a drag and drop tool that I can create different email marketing strategies and automate the processes using this drag and drop editor. So whatever the action is on the website, maybe someone doesn't fill out the entire form. Maybe they abandon their shopping cart when you're trying to get them to purchase the annual meeting exhibitor packets. Whatever the case may be, you can go ahead and set up an automated campaign to remind them to continually do that. So gone are the days where we need to set a reminder on our Outlook calendar to go back to the XYZ system and pull the report of who didn't, what exhibitors haven't responded yet and send out the email to them. We don't have to do that anymore. We can set it in here. We can set wait times. We can set send times. We can, do all sorts of things. We can even just completely abandon a person if they don't do certain actions. So it's really interesting the way all of these pieces build on one another, all toward personalizing the content on our website. It's a complex process. You can't set it up overnight, unfortunately. You really have to know your users, you have to know your systems, and then you have to bring all of that information into here. You have to begin to gather data in the web analytics module here. And then once you've started to do that, that's when the real personalization can begin to happen, because once you have data, it just goes back in that life cycle to what we were talking about at the very start of the call, which is that personalization piece. So I know I went over this really, really quickly. It was meant as an introduction for those of you who aren't even familiar with the fact that this exists in Kentico. I think this sets Kentico apart from other content management systems, because this piece here is really the next generation of all of our organizational websites. So I'll stop there and let Taylor turn it over to any questions that we have.
Thanks, Maggie. Awesome job. That was a great presentation. We do have a couple questions, though, that came through the question window for you. Well, the first one is, how long does it take to implement a marketing system like the one you just showed?
A while, unfortunately. The actual technical implementation doesn't take very long at all. As you can see, this is really user-friendly and really straightforward. I didn't dig into any of the actual content or contact creation or email template creation, but it's all there. And to be really honest with you, it comes in a format that we would expect as end users. So from a usability standpoint, very simple to use. I think where a lot of organizations struggle and where the time comes in is the strategy piece. Like I said earlier, we have these disparate systems and we tend to run these pieces separately, even though they really all should be part of the same overall strategy. Because in the end, we don't care if someone comes to us from Facebook or comes to us from a conference or comes to us because they just found us from Google. What we want is we want to take that lead. We want to push to them content that is relevant to them based on what they're doing on our site, and then convert them into a client.
Well, great. We do have one more. The last one is, can you tailor emails based on demographics or metadata?
Absolutely, you can. So I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but we can take a quick look at the email marketing that we have here. We have our template management here. We'll take a quick look at the template management. So the template management is like you would expect. There's a nice WYSIWYG editor so that we can see our template. Lot of ability to customize with style sheets, to have standard footers. All of the Kentico email system includes templates for opt-in and opt-out and unsubscribe, so you're covered with those legalities. If we take a quick look here at one of the email feeds in our email template and we go to the configuration here, you'll be able to see where you can start customizing who these emails actually go to. The other way you do that is by building the email here and then bringing it into the marketing automation piece and creating an automated process based on some of those attributes that you're looking at with specifically going forward. So that would happen under here in your actions tab, and actions that would trigger and email marketing. So if somebody signed up from the state of Michigan and you are having a program in Michigan in 2 months, that would trigger this based on that attribute. So the answer is yes, but it is a little bit more complex than that, and we would work together to figure that out and to make sure that it's all seamlessly set up in the system.
Okay, great. Well, that's a wrap for today. I want to thank you all for attending today's webinar, and thank you, Maggie, for a great presentation you put on. Hopefully everyone has a great end to their week, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar, which is May 17th. Have a great day, everyone.